Hello everyone, this is Genius Yoshi, and today we're going to be talking about what are, in my opinion, the top 5 mistakes that Lorcana players are doing when building a deck. Let's not waste another second and dive right into them. Let's start things off with mistake number 1, playing everything in 4 copies. There are certain cards that just scream, don't play me in too many copies, such as Ursula's Cauldron, which is fantastic when you have one on the field, but drawing a second one is really not as good, and drawing more copies is almost a death sentence for your deck. Then you have Elsa, Spirit of Winter, or high cost and not inkables that can get stuck in your hand for a long time and prevent you from inking cards and reaching those cards and just being stuck, not having anything to play. Also, note that you can flex those inkable slots, and if you're going to be inking the cards most of the time, then having a variety of options in these slots can play to your advantage, because you can ink the copies that aren't favorable for the current matchup. So whenever you're putting a card in your deck, ask yourself, should I be playing a full 4 copies of it, or should I be playing a smaller amount? And even if it's a card you like, sometimes the correct answer is to play fewer copies to enhance the consistency of your deck. Let's move on to mistake number 2, playing too many uninkables in your deck. Whenever you're including an uninkable in your deck, you're essentially saying, I will play this card. Because what are your other options? Getting it stuck in your hand, and you can't ink it. So you really want to play each and every one of those cards, which means that you're putting pressure on the rest of your deck to become your ink sources. Which means that if you're playing too low amount of ink sources, well, first of all, you can run out of inkables and then you can't play anything and you'll lose. Or you won't be able to play as many of these inkable cards as you'd like. Suppose you have 2 of them that are good answers, well, you're going to be forced to ink them just so you can play your uninkable cards. So you want to be very careful with the amount of uninkables you're playing, especially at high ink costs. I find that playing between 12 and 16 copies of uninkable cards is about the right amount. You can tune it based on the specific strategy and the cost of the cards, but be careful not to add too many, because what's worse than not playing the stuff you want is not being able to play anything at all. You just stepped into mistake 2.5 if you forgot to subscribe. Mistake number 3, building a bad ink curve. Now, I've put a sample bad ink curve there, where you play the same amount of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 drops, just 10 of each. Seems like a good curve, right? Everything is flat. Well, that's not a good ink curve. Why? Because at a certain point in the game, you're going to be in top deck mode, or you're going to have reached these high levels of ink, and suddenly inking a card isn't as valuable as what it was early on. You'd much rather play almost everything that makes it into your hand. So you want to switch that ink curve to be a little bit more top heavy in terms of your inkable cards, because high costed cards are good to ink early and are good to play late. Also, you want to adjust your ink curve based on the deck you're playing. If you're playing a Stitch Rockstar deck, then you want to have more 1 and 2 drops and have this powerful beast of a 6 drop to end the game. So you want your ink curve to be representative of your deck, keeping in mind that some of the inkables you want to ink early and play later in the game. Next, we have mistake number 4, playing bad cards. Now, this happens a lot when people are trying to play teams, or whenever people are trying to play, oh, this card shifts into that other card. Well, at the end of the day, you want to be playing the strongest cards in their slot. For example, here I have a list of princesses. Moana, Rapunzel, fantastic. The Auroras, great. Minnie Mouse and Ariel, not so great. I know they're princesses, but because you're playing a princesses themed deck does not mean that you have to include only princesses. Playing a stronger 2-drop and a stronger 4-drop, or something that's more that's better for your curve, or just stronger power level cards in general, are going to serve you well. I have the same question with Jasmine, Queen of Agrabah. You don't have to play both of them because they shift into one another. The 5-drop's really good at healing. It's a nice inkable 5-drop, but the shift relationship between the two of them's not giving you that much benefit. So if you're playing the 3-drop, you're playing it because you think she's good, and she's not that great. So be careful about bad cards that try to sneak in simply because they look like they would fit well. Mirror, mirror on my wall, what's the biggest mistake of them all? And that's not having a game plan. You can be playing great cards, but if you're playing a Maleficent early to try and gain some lore quick with a Cusco on turn 5, but then you're trying to play some removal because you want to control what your opponent is doing, and you want to mill them, and you want to... If you try to do everything, you're going to be doing everything poorly, and that'll not end well for you. If you try to be an aggressive deck, commit to being aggressive. Do not invest into late game. If you make it to the late game, you have lost. If you try to play a control-ish type strategy, don't try to win the game immediately, because that's not your game plan. So when you pick your cards, make sure that you have a strategy. Make sure that you know how you want your early game to transition into your late game. What are the pieces early? What is their purpose in your deck? And having that game plan is what differentiates the weaker decks from the stronger decks. Especially solid game plans, just playing powerful cards that have one goal in common. And that is one of the best advice that I can give you in deck building. Make sure that you have a solid game plan, stick to that game plan, and it also helps you to know how to pilot the deck. And it's going to help you forge a path to victory. I hope that you've enjoyed this video reviewing what are, in my opinion, the top 5 mistakes that people make making Lorcana decks. Let me know in the comments below what you think is the biggest mistake that people make, so that we can all learn from each other and stop making these mistakes, or at least let's do them less often. Unless we're playing a really fun deck, then we're making mistakes on purpose for entertainment. And if you like mistakes on purpose for entertainment, do subscribe to the channel and keep on watching, because we're going to be making a ton of silly decks in the future. But first, hit the like button and have a great day.